Hiring Manager for India and SAC, for setting up the stage and discussing about what is the Zero Trust framework and how we can adopt it to help us in our security or new cybersecurity issues. Okay, so over to you, Gurinder.
Thank you so much, Brijesh. I'm Gurinder from Netscope, and as Brijesh said, the topic of our discussion will be achieving security nirvana through zero trust. So I will spend just first 10 minutes setting the context, and then I think so we can move to the panel discussion and more drill down discussion on this topic, and we can have different perspective from the esteemed panel members which are there in this session. If I talk about zero trust security model, on a nutshell, I would say that organization should not trust anything inside or outside its perimeter by definition. And in fact, they must inspect all the traffic, verify anything connecting to a system before granting access. So that is a basic definition which was laid down, I would say, like 10 years back, wherein this particular framework started evolving. And after that, there were different recommendations as well as changes which happened. So when this particular framework was cited 10 years back, so while it's generating a lot of buzz in the cyber world, but there have been a lot of, I would say, white papers, standards, frameworks, which talks about this, NIST framework or Gartner Kata framework. And the implicit thing inside this particular framework is continuous verification, limiting the blast radius, automating the security proactiveness, typically for any kind of incident, and basically explicit to implicit trust. So that is something which has been the foundation for this particular framework. And so if I typically talk to any customer today, zero trust is a project going on. So whether it is a government or an enterprise sector, so there are different teams which typically initiate these framework as well as architecture or implementation. There may be a networking team, there may be an identity team, there may be a VPN team, or even there can be a data security team. But fundamentally, zero trust is nothing but it's moved from, as I said, like explicit to implicit trust. It's about creating micro parameters around your users, around your data, around your devices, and around your application. So basically, sorry, can you do it? Yeah. So it's important to understand that there is no one zero trust solution. Like typically, there are a lot of vendors which are postulating that we have a solution which can address all your zero trust framework needs through a single solution. But as I said, like it's important to understand there is no single solution which can basically cater to this particular framework. So it's basically an architecture and a model, and it integrates a lot of elements together in order to basically provide a zero trust conditional security for a user. So it is important to understand the why. Like when I talk about why this particular framework become very important today, because if you talk about a user working from office premises or from his home premises, so they like there is a lot of flexibility which organizations are adapting, wherein a user can work from anywhere and everywhere. And so the data is also anywhere and everywhere. In fact, like I would say that zero trust is getting more attention today because the attack surface has increased today, because the data is prevailing, a lot of data is prevailing outside the office premises today. And I would say like traditional architecture, it was all about protecting the parameter where most of your data was. But today the data has moved outside, so it is on your mobile devices, it is in your IaaS platforms like AWS, Azure, GCP, where a lot of organizations are hosting their applications, or they are hosting some critical data in the servers hosted in AWS, Azure, GCP. And this work from pushed by the organization due to pandemic, it has really aggregated the adaptation of this framework. And I would say like in fact, if you see the data which has been created in last couple of years, or which will be created outside the office premises, this will be in like petabytes, I would say. So user access to this data has to be secured, and since the attack surface has increased, so there's a lot of interest by hackers also, typically for the data which is prevailing outside. So the idea is like the security framework has not only been limited to implicit trust for a particular user, because there have been a lot of security mishaps which has happened wherein the this particular implicit trust was basically broken, wherein there have been credentials compromised, and the hackers were able to infiltrate the network with this implicit trust. So access to your data securely with conditions and based on context for a user and data is something which is the key for this framework. You have to understand, in simple words, zero trust is basically a risk-based conditional access. So Gartner may call it Kata, or Google may come out with their own architecture, typically in adapting this zero trust framework or implementing this zero trust framework in their environment. Or even like when you talk about Snowden, who was typically popularized this particular concept by breaching it because he was implicitly trusted by the organization, which was breached. So like typically if you imagine it from a scale from 0 to 5, where 0 is basically zero access and 5 is basically full access. So zero trust typically talks about a floating scenario where based on the user behavior as well as the condition, like say if a user is working from his office in order to access an application like Teams, or he is working from home to access the same application which is given by the enterprise. So the condition for a user is different. So he's basically moving from a trusted laptop to a untrusted home laptop, network or laptop. So in that case, based on the condition of the user from 0 to 5, there can be or there has to be a conditional access as well as user centric security, which needs to be evolving based on the different user behavior as well as the condition and based on the data which typically a user is trying to access. So in simple words, this is a nutshell for this particular solution. And typically, if I talk about there are multiple elements in this architecture, but the four key things which form the base for zero trust implementation is there has to be a very good SASE player, because a lot of data is getting created outside. People are adapting AWS, Azure, GCP info. There has to be a good endpoint security player also, because the attack surface has increased. And again, there has to be a handshake between the SASE player, endpoint security player. They should be talking to the SIM player, as well as there has to be identity player, which becomes very important when you start giving access to a user from anywhere. So in that case, these four key solutions, whether it is the identity access management, core player, endpoint security player, and SASE player, these are the key, you can say, solutions which typically form the base for the zero trust architecture, which any organization today is adapting or trying to adapt. Uh, if I talk about Netscope, so we are providing the zero trust framework to a lot of our customers today. So we try to access what is the current state of the enterprise, where are users coming from which network, whether it is trusted device or not. We try to give visibility through different solutions which we have in our platform, and we monitor the complete data, like where exactly the data is prevalent for the organization, where it is going, and there can be some conditional access which can be provided specifically for data access from inside or outside the organization based on different conditions. So Netscope helps a customer typically in reimagining his perimeter with respect to a user coming from trusted, non-trusted, he's working from home or he's working from office. So there are different security solutions or controls which a typical platform which Netscope offer to our users, and we can get into more details on the different solutions which typically we are offering, whether it is a UB analysis part of it or DLP on cloud or cloud firewall. So I will not get into more details on that. So that can be a separate discussion altogether. So in a nutshell, this is a framework which typically Netscope has with the help of different solutions. And I just wanted to start the discussion with the discussion on these frameworks typically. So over to you, Vivek. I think so. I just wanted
Thanks,
to give a
Gurinder.
bit.
Thanks for setting up the
Thanks.
stage.
Yeah.
So, let me quickly welcome our panelists who are there with us on this session. So, we have Professor Triveni Singh, who is the Superintendent of Police, Cybercrime UP Police. Welcome, sir. to the session. We
Yeah,
also
thank
have
you.
Ms. Reema Rajeshwari, Superintendent of Police, Telangana Plus Headquarter. Welcome, ma'am, to the session. We also have Mr. Shank Bajpai, who is the Chief Information Security Officer for Export Credit Guarantee Corporation Limited. Welcome to the session, sir. We also have Mr. Balram Chaudhary, who is the Chief Information Security Officer for ASK Investment Managers Limited. Welcome, sir, to the panel. Okay.
Thank you.
So, so with the stage which is set up by Gurinder on the zero trust piece of it, so I will start with you, Professor Triveni, sir. What you are typically seeing cyber security trends transformation, okay, based on the cyber crimes, the modern cyber crimes that you are seeing, which may be recorded to your departments. What's you see? You are seeing those changes, the transformation in the modern cyber security types of crimes. So maybe your view on that, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Am I audible?
Absolutely.
Yes, sir.
So let me start with a figure first. The kind of cybercrime happening. If I'm talking about the statistics in last 2 years, we have got more than 1 lakh cases in Uttar Pradesh only. I'm not talking about the India as a whole. I'm talking about Uttar Pradesh alone. In last two years, 1 lakh cases cybercrime. And cybercrime not in nature of some simple crime like they used to compromise your ID, they used to hack your mail ID, or they used to create a clone of your social media account. Now they are into high tech crime. They are into cryptocurrency exchange fraud. They are launching ransomware attack, and they're compromising your entire accounts through different means. Uh, Recently, just 3 4 days back, I got a case in which a cryptocurrency exchange were created. It was completely a fake exchange, and assistant general manager of SBI, State Bank of India, he got duped of 63 lakh rupees. He invested there, and just now, just 1 2 hours earlier, I got a mail in which they have created a fake exchange, share market exchange. So he had to download certain application from Play Store. He invested. Even he got return, huge return in 2 3 days. And when he invested 7 lakh rupees, all of a sudden the exchange, it was wiped out. There was no share, nothing to show in the wallet and all that. So this kind of crime is happening. Your topic is very appropriate, zero trust architecture, because this is the age of spoofing. Anyone can spoof your identity. Anyone can spoof your mail ID. They are spoofing your mobile number. They are spoofing. Even they are, spoofing your IMEI of the handset, MAC addresses of the handset, mobile phone, and desktop. So everything in this era can be spoofed, and that's why your the topic is very appropriate. Zero trust. We don't have to trust anyone. We don't have to trust in the screen itself. uh, and for that we need to be sure that the machine or the man whom I am talking to is genuine. That we can ensure it through installing certain application, certain binding with certain device, or just all tools and technology related with identity access management. Uh, Unless and until this is perfect, anyone can be victim of any kind of crime, because this is a virtual world, and lots of tools and technology are available. Even AI enabled crime is happening. You have recently we have seen a very huge rise in cases related with synthetic video and synthetic voice. I mean, they are using the deepfake technology and they are committing any kind of crime. And this kind of cases are coming on the daily basis to our police station. We are investigating such kind of cases. So in this stage of when spoofing is of that order, when anything can be spoofed, technology and tools are easily available on internet. Simply you have to download. You can download virtual numbers. You can download even virtual payment account. We are investigating a case in which thousands of mails and thousands of SMS are being delivered to thousands of people, and the gang is working from the Nepal, Kathmandu. They're the Chinese people, and they're running this racket. They're sending part-time job message to millions of people. And in last 2 3 months, rough calculation is that they have collected 2,500 crore rupees. So what is happened? What is happening? They are sending the message, from message to WhatsApp call, and from WhatsApp call to Telegram call, and then the virtual numbers, and those virtual number are going, routing through. Ultimately, it's going to Tencent. Tencent, it's a payment gateway operator somewhere located in China. So now the entire cybercrime scenario is completely changed. It's global in nature. It's not local. Even the gang are operating internationally. Few of the people sitting here in UP, they have connect somewhere in USA, and the money is going to some East Asian country. So they have created an international syndicate, and that's why the cyber security is emerging as a greater concern for corporate sector, for government sector, and even for the people at large.
Absolutely, absolutely, sir. And I think you mentioned a very valid point that zero trust needs to be adopted not only on a security layer but on the individual layer, right? So
Yeah.
it's a habit, it's a behavior which typically you have to adopt in your day-to-day practice. So thanks for your view, sir. So I want to understand similar on that from Mr. Shashank Bajpayee. What's
But
your view on?
let me
Yeah,
just for intervention.
yeah, yeah, sure,
I
sir.
have to move for a PM duty. PM is coming here, and we are in
Yeah,
that. The meeting is going to start. So I will take the lift. Thank you.
thank you so much, sir. Thank you so
Thank
much,
you
sir,
so
for
much,
your
sir.
time.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Yeah. So with that, I want to just take your view, Mr. Shashank Bajpayee, that Triveni sir has set up one view on how the cybersecurity and the type of an attacks is changing on a global level. It's not only limited to an enterprise. What is the view? What is the transformation that you are seeing being focusing on a credit union where more number games, more financial factors comes into picture? So what's your view on that in terms of a modern cybersecurity risks?
Definitely, I mean, law enforcement agencies are doing are really commendable. Both Triveni sir as well as Rima madam, they are at least on the forefront of the cyber theft and cyber crime, and it is really commendable because they are the ones who are actually deterrent to the cyber thefts. And what we see in the industrial side, I'll definitely set the context. Saying that in the post pandemic world, wherein the work from anywhere kind of scenarios have kind of arisen, and the landscape has actually changed for us. Typically in the corporate world, we were always safeguarded with as already Gurinder also explained it, we had very good firewalls, protected houses and everything. So we were at least safeguarded from the threat landscape from that perspective, and we had good gatekeepers, we can say that. But now, because of the work from home or work from anywhere kind of scenario, especially with the digital adoption of different technologies. In the financial sector, we have been adopting a lot of technologies. The fintech has been a contributor to the various different demographics. But yes, we were never challenged from exposing our internal employees on that front. So we were kind of safeguarding our resources on that front. But now we are open to that threat, which is like a global threat in itself, the cybersecurity. And when I said that, the focus is obviously on a data centric approach, because we want to protect, as you rightly said, financial data, maybe critical to both government institutions as well as financial institutions. So we are obviously focused towards protecting our digital data and the intellectual property which we have. Obviously, with the financial transactions having in-house, it increases the we can say the hacking incentive of our organizations, which are typically looked in the eyes of the hackers to steal lucrative information. And obviously, the rise of ransomware attacks and everything is exponential. I mean, it has never been this bad. I mean, I will just say that we understand that data is the new oil. Even the hackers, they understand that. So when we are trying to mine the data and create business opportunities and do a lot of analytics on top of it, so that we can drive our business in the right direction. Similarly, the hackers, they understood that they have to run behind data. So when I look at zero trust architecture, and especially with the culmination of digital innovations, I say that it should have a data centric approach. And zero trust, as Triveni sir said, that it is not new, and it has been with security practitioners. And that's where all security practitioners, be it on the corporate side or on the law enforcement side, we cannot trust anyone, rightly said. But from a technical architecture, I say that the new age technologies, be it the microservices based applications or the micro segmentations on the network side, thankfully to the advancement in network technologies and whatever we see now, is really fast paced, obviously, and it have to build in the design itself the zero trust approach, because we cannot have a complete design and then look at the stack and say that now I'm going to start a zero trust approach. It is never that. It is right from the design level itself the zero trust starts, and then with the adoption of hybrid cloud and new technologies, just add the complexity to it. So yes, we need to have new age zero trust solutions, obviously on the network side, identity side, as well as on the data side, and it has to be a distributed approach, because as the digital landscape is getting more distributed, our security control should also be distributed. We cannot live with a federated or a typical perimeter firewall kind of an approach. It was good back for old days, but now we need to have a distributed technology approach for enforcing that trust. No one, because it is very easy way to enforce security. Like you can block everyone and then start enforcing the access control list. But yes, it will not work with the new age technologies wherein everything is on APIs. So with that, I mean, having said that context, from the corporate side, yeah.
Thanks, Mr. Shashank. And so I just want to quickly have a view of Mr. Balram Chaudhary as well. So, sir, as you are seeing, and I think you are very focused organizations now more from a wealth management, where I think most of the people are not now going towards how to curb wealth management, and that's where cybersecurity comes into picture. Like was thing which Mr. Professor has mentioned, a crypto piece, which also becoming a part of a wealth management. So, what's your view? What's the thing that you see is getting transformed in a different kind of attacks specific to your sectors?
Good. Thanks, Brizes, for onboarding me. So just I'll see. We are in financial organizations as well, and yes, the budget wise and the limitations wise, that bank will be bigger, but we are not doing less business than any another financial organization as well. And while the data security comes, so as a organization, so yes, we are in a lean team with the security team, and then there where the budget is concerned. So altogether, people have started thinking about that. What is the concerns in case there is a data breach? What is the concerns in case you are getting hacked? What is the concerns in case that the people are talking about data is a oil, data is a capital? Yes, everybody has started thinking in this way, and they have started investing and protecting. Somehow, I think I joined this organizations only 2 months back, and then somehow I have that convinced board and convinced MD executive what is the regions we would like to have some kind of good technology which needs to be implemented and can safeguard the customer information. Altogether, this is not that only I am handling that PMS management, but across the country, all big banks is my distributor who we are getting integrated, and then some of the times they consume my API and I consume their API and vice versa as well. So yes, the people are talking about the zero trust. Yes, zero trust is supposed to be there. So I will come back to you on the zero trust, what we are doing and how we are doing. But typically you have asked the questions about as a organization's buy. So So I believe that the API security, it's becoming very, very serious concerns, while only the 2, 3 aspect for authentication, authorizations perspective. And we need to think about that as well while we create zero trust architecture. Someone say zero trust architecture, someone says SASE, some Google will say something else, someone else will say something else. But this is the approach that security and cyber security guys should be creating, starting from individual and the customer who is accessing your consuming your applications and doing transactions of that. So this is not only if we are having DLP or DRM implemented, antivirus implemented at one places and it's getting secure, and if we do have perimeter firewall or something like it will get secure. No. So people are working nowadays in the multi-cloud approach, multi-cloud environment, and we should be having some kind of distributed approach so that we should be secure. We should be finding out where that identity can take place, and we can caught then and there, so that there should not be any breach. So we should be, yes, thinking about the SASE and ZTNA approach. So I'll come what we are doing, but this is what, yes, cybersecurity is not less critical than banking, financial organization, and even in my organization. This has been journey
Sure.
has been started. Yes, if we were talking about 5 years back, this was not the case, but nowadays everybody is giving, the board is listing exactly what is the cyber security. Yeah.
Yeah, I absolutely, sir. I think most of the people are moving towards that, so that's where the security needs to be there. So, to now, my next question is to Rima ma'am, to you, and I think Triveni sir has set one stage, and we got a viewpoint from Mr. Shashank and Mr. Balram, and we are also seeing there are multiple initiatives going on, running by the police departments. Something specific to safe cities, where you are maybe installing multiple components for a security or for a surveillance piece of it, and there are multiple data points come along with that. There are multiple data and other factors come around, which is very critical in nature. So what's your view on that, how you are making sure that your security guard that, and how this zero trust can be helpful in those kind of an approach? So if you share some viewpoints on that, Rima ma'am.
Thank you, Pradesh. A very good morning to my fellow panelists and to you all. And I must thank GovConnect and also Netscope team for this amazing opportunity to share my views about the most important topic we are going to talk about in 2022. How are we going to handle, rather manage, a zero trust framework strategy in a government setting? My esteemed panelists, whoever spoke before me, they have given a very good understanding about the zero trust framework as a concept for overall cybersecurity. Trivedi sir has definitely given a very good perspective about how it's going to impact cyber crimes in a large country like India, when we have to deal with a new age crime on a daily basis. It's not like the conventional crime scenario where you have certain crime heads and you know how you're going to deal with them. You have the policing interventions basically set out. You have your SOPs, your standard operating procedures, how to deal with these conventional crimes. But today we live in a world where there is new crime every day. So you have to keep reinventing your policing interventions on a daily basis. So I must thank Triveni sir for giving that great understanding about what kind of challenges the police department is facing on a daily basis. And my fellow panelists who spoke before me, they've given a very good understanding about this new paradigm shift. The multi-region, multi-cloud based security infrastructure that we have to deal with, irrespective of the sector we are in. We may be in the government sector, we may be in the private sector, banking, IT, anything you name. We have to deal with this issue as a whole. So I'm really glad that I got this opportunity to speak about it. I have to say that we're all by now sufficiently exposed to the new mantra, which is trust but verify. I would say that this is a very, very, very old school policing strategy. Like if any of you had any previous experience with the old school policing in India, see when you typically interact with a police officer. See, for example, if I'm a civilian and I'm going to meet a police officer, I'm going to go meet the officer, introduce myself, and I say, "Sir, my name is Rema Rajeshwari." The first question in his mind is she actually Rema Rajeshwari? Is that her real name? that authentication oriented policing that we did conventionally in India is exactly what we are trying to incorporate in the zero trust framework. Basically, you are going to start questioning everything. That implicit trust, I think Mr. Gurinder spoke about it. We are going to question the whole concept around implicit trust. Basically, the strategy tells you that, well, you want to trust something, go ahead and trust, but verify before you're going to trust. And you have to authenticate every single person who is involved in using that particular network. It can be a security apparatus, it can be a larger security infrastructure. I mean, throughout 2021, we saw government finally admitting and openly talking about how much exposed we are. Government spoke about sustained, sophisticated, malicious cyber campaigns, which pose a great risk to the national security apparatus and to an individual's privacy. You see, both are equally important. When we talk about cybersecurity, sometimes we get really consumed into that macro point of view. We only look at cybersecurity as how it's going to impact an organization, how it's going to impact a nation. Sometimes in the noise, an individual privacy concerns, they get sidelined. But today we are looking at a trust framework where we are considering every single stakeholder who has something to do with this. So that is why I think it is. I mean, especially when we live in a world which is completely interconnected and our vulnerabilities are exposed, 24/7. It is even more important for us to adapt to this new practice. I'm sure it is not really new. Somebody was just mentioning that it's been 10 years since people started talking about it, but then finally we are talking about it at a much deeper level. And the pandemic, the COVID pandemic, had definitely contributed to that kind of paradigm shift in the way we think and approach this new strategy. And I'm really glad that we are talking about it. What, just one thing that I wanted to mention, that you see, for the purpose of simplifying the strategy, I just wanted to say that, like, when you are looking at a security infrastructure, so basically, when you want to implement a zero trust framework strategy, whether it's physical or virtual, it is considered untrustworthy until it is verified and every single user is authenticated. So, what kind of challenges we are looking at it? The most important challenge is today we live in a world which is flooded with data. So we are looking at a scenario where we have to deal with massive data. Let me just take the example of a small police station in my jurisdiction. Until maybe 10 years ago, everything, every crime record, your case diaries, everything was handled manually. And then slowly we started adopting the digital technologies. We started uploading them online. But even today, if you look at how things are done at a police station level, it's a hybrid kind of a work culture. We have the uploading of FAR online, we have the data management structures, but at the same time, we also maintain manual records. So it's kind of a hybrid work system where you are still sticking to the old school way of doing things, and then you are also adapting into the new digital, environment, right? So massive data management on the one side, and a very hybrid and a complicated work infrastructure on the other head. And often for each aspect of it, you have to plan the zero trust framework. So it is going to involve a lot of manpower. It's going to involve a lot of change in the mindset of people who have to deal with it on a daily basis, especially when it is very dynamic. So we're not talking about a problem which is there. You have the solutions, you're going to go ahead and implement it. We are looking at a problem which is evolving on a daily basis. So your solution, the authentication oriented trust work that we are talking about today, has to be equally dynamic. It has to be evolving every day, and especially in a government setting, that we have in our country, where we deal with the manpower constraints, resource constraints, such a large population to cater to, and different kinds of a crime which evolves every day. It is going to be a major challenge. So I'm sure the good thing in 2002 that is going to be is that we are finally taking this strategy seriously, and we actually want to go ahead and try this, which will definitely ensure that we are safe, especially in an interconnected world, and individual privacy is also taken into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. I think you put across some very relevant points, specifically to the hybrid culture and factors where the things are not only digital but there are manual also. So, with that, we also joined in between by Mr. Ambuj Bhalla, who's the Director IT and Chief Information Security Officer for Indigo. So, welcome, sir. And my next question is directed to you. So, as you are into an aviation sector and focusing on multiple compliances, same capture and manage so much data points related to different critical systems, and during a pandemic you may have seen the shift of the user applications and data going everywhere. So what's your view on the different challenges that you have faced, and how this zero trust, which is the current topic that we are discussing today, will helpful, and maybe if you have adopted some practices along with that during a course of time. So over to you, Mr. Ambuj.
Thank you, Brajesh. Thank you for having me as a panel member, and a very good morning to all the co-panelists. So I think I was reading through an article a few days back where it was mentioned that digital economy in India is expected to reach a value of $1 trillion by 2022, right? And what does this mean actually? This means that a lot of your business processes and are going to be automated. They're going to be digitized. So the digitized journey is already on the way for organizations, and they've adopted to it already, right? But with this, I believe that the approach to doing thing in an environment, right? It really becomes very important that identity becomes the core for all digital interactions. You may have various factors attributed towards it. So, for example, you may have databases, you may have workload systems, applications, all are attributed towards an identity centric approach is the core mantra when it comes to adopting a digitized journey for an organization, right? So and I think this identity centric approach is basically more towards having zero trust based access. Now zero trust is something that's been there and being discussed since 2004, when the concept of deep perimeterization was introduced, right? So it was coined by in the CISO forum that why do we backhaul everything into our environments, and why can't we have an open architecture? And today it has become a reality actually, right? So so as to basically establish this within an organization, right? So what a trend that has been followed in aviation sector. So you mentioned about aviation sector in particular, right? So aviation sector, it's a community where you have partners, you have third parties supporting for a customer to fly, right? So when it comes to implementing all of this, right, uh, this leads to four major principles that we have adopted, right? So what we say is that all the communications and the resources are authenticated and authorized, and the channels of communications are all encrypted. We do a lot of behavior analytics to understand how our systems or the users interacting with the environment, and we do a lot of dynamic policies. Implementing dynamic policies in this digitized world is really very important, right? You understand the user behavior, their environment, the way they access the systems, and invoke a policy dynamic. So some of the classic examples is the Microsoft's conditional access that we've introduced, right? throws up, yeah, it understands the behavior and it throws up a step of authentication or a step of authentication or a risk-based authentication, right? I think also very important aspect in this is not just the identity, whereas digital in the digital world there are various type of risks that are getting exposed, right? So I think that people talked about data security risk, people talked about third party risk or the resiliency risk or the automation risk. So when it comes to uh, commoditizing a system or a solution, I think all the comprehensive view of all these risks has to be factored, and a solution has to be designed in a way that it gives a basically never sorry, I'm forgetting the term. Yeah, basically never trust and always verify, and segment your network such that uh, you have I mean, so the problems or the issues or the risks are contained, right? And very important to all of this is a homogeneous view, a centralized view for for your cyber defense mechanisms. That plays a very vital role when it comes to delivering or implementing solutions that are basically on trust based models.
Okay. So thanks for your view. And with that, I want to go over to Gurinder. So Gurinder, maybe you have heard the challenges and the factors associated with each of the domain, right? So here we have an example of a law enforcement agencies. We have coming from an aviations, finance, PMS, and all. So what are the practical challenges that you have seen, and how this zero trust architecture in practicality has addressed that? So if you can give your view on that, Gurinder.
Okay, thank you so much, and thanks all for to the esteemed panelists. So, Brijesh, I will take you to the pandemic era. Like I would say, it was a turning point for the industry. It really brought complete network inversion in very short span of time. Like, in fact, a lot of organization who were envisioning their digital transformation in 3 years, they were forced to squeeze their journey in couple of months. So due to this accelerated, I would say, growth as well as adaptation of cloud, as well as most of the data creating outside, so there were a lot of new challenges which the organization came up. Like if I talk about a traditional example which I really witnessed was like the traditional VPN architecture which the organizations were following, it completely broke down during the pandemic era because like I would say like traditional VPN architecture, like where users were completely backhauling the traffic to their network and then they were going to the cloud or then they were going to the network. It was not meant to basically withstand 90% of load, which users basically came up on that particular infrastructure in couple of months time. So in that case, a lot of organizations, they were forced to basically re-envision their existing architecture. So whether it is their traditional VPN architecture moving to a more zero-centric approach, because they have to open a lot of access now direct to internet with the help of the new solution which they need to adapt. In addition, like if I talk about there was a lot of usage of these collaboration applications which started happening during the pandemic, like because work from home was a normal scenario. So a lot of people were a lot of organization, they started using Zoom or Teams like collaboration applications, and we witnessed a lot of information leakage happening through these applications during this era. So typically what I wanted to stress was like because of this pandemic, a lot of things changed, and a lot of organizations, as well as whether it is a government sector or enterprise sector, they had to re-envision their architecture with the zero trust principles. So it was like today, if I talk about an organization which has say 100 different remote location, so it becomes you can say 100 different perimeter locations or firewalls which they have to fortify. But with the help of because of this change, wherein users were going direct to net and they were accessing a lot of applications outside their infrastructure, so a user centric security became very prominent during this pandemic era. So Typically, like say if an organization is giving access to say 20 or 30 applications to their 1000 users, so and with different devices, so in that case each application, each device become a different parameter for that application. And as like we are talking about floating security profiles, like Ambut said that we are talking about dynamic policies wherein based on the user behavior as well as his risk score, we are able to adapt a security profile or policy for that particular user. So typically user centric security with risk based scoring, with a lot of UB analysis, which typically happened to give a risk score to a user based on his different activity on a specific data or from a different device. These kind of use cases really became very important during this pandemic era. And there were a lot of frameworks which came up, like SASE was a new framework which a lot of organizations started adapting, or followed by SSE framework. But in a nutshell, if you talk about all these frameworks, they are based on the zero trust principles. Whether you give access to any application, it's a collaboration application where your data is getting stored on the Microsoft servers. How do you basically think about the security for that? How do you think about the security when a user is accessing, working from home, he is using his personal device and getting access to corporate applications? So the idea was more user centric security, more data centric security became very important, and more cloud centric security became very important during this pandemic era. And today a lot of organizations, even when people have started coming to offices, they are thinking about the zero trust principles in order to provision a better security for the enterprises.
Okay. Thanks, Gurinder. So I think just to conclude, so what you're saying that whether it's your legacy VPN approach, whether you have now started adopting different applications while the users are roaming, so the zero trust approach, or now we are calling it from coming it from a SASE or an SSC, is typically helping the organizations to address the current challenges, right? So that's good. So with that, I am again coming to Mr. Shashank Bajpai. Said we heard that these are the typical architectures and solutions that are addressing the current challenges, right? Coming it from a distributed world where you are accessing something over a cloud, hybrid kind of a nature. Users are working from anywhere. How you have gone through it over this journey, and what's the other initiatives that you are taking internally? Because every organization, when we go and touch upon talking about a zero trust, but a zero trust framework for them may go in a different way based on their priorities. So what's your view on that, Mr. Shashank?
Yeah, Brijesh. So yeah, rightly explained by within the the technology adoption grew. I would rather say that even if we had those collaboration tools and everything, they were not optimally used till the point we were in a pandemic and we were really consuming that kind of services on a global scale, and it was definitely what we have seen across our customers as well as our partners as well as internally within the corporation. So I mean that is how digital transformations, even if it was not exponential transformation for us, but yes, because we had those tools and everything rightly implemented, but we never consumed that much of them. But yes, that is what has happened in the pre or post pandemic world, and that has really changed. From a strategy wise, when I look at the landscape changes, which likely pushed by the changes in the work from anywhere kind of scenarios. I guess, as I rightly said, that we are no more a centric or a federated security provider. Now we have to have a distributed approach. We have to have endpoint controls. Have really become a major challenge, because they were prominently driven at securing something which is within the corporate network, within our reach and within our availability perspective. But now, as they are working from anywhere, the type of Wi-Fi services they would be consuming from their home, or maybe anywhere where they're traveling, it is actually increasing, right? Because what is the security parameters at that end, we are completely unaware of. But obviously, VPNs and everything, we have re-strategized the same controls. But yes, this is the the threat landscape which which has grown as I already explained. But yes, from a strategy where I say that when we are adopting multiple clouds and we are looking at a hybrid kind of an approach across on-premise as well as say private cloud and different cloud services, maybe software service and everything. We have to have that mentality of sec DevOps, right? We have to start leveraging the human resource also in an efficient way, because I cannot have security sit outside and start protecting assets. I mean, it was good for old days that security engineers could sit in a separate team, and then they can cater to the IT assets and secure them. But now it just has to be inbuilt onto the engineering team itself, so that those who are actually handling the cloud resources, they are actually doing both development operations as well as security. So that's where I say the sec DevOps is the thing which is looking at from organization perspective. And with respect to technologies, this as the minister said, that there are a lot of artificial intelligence being used by fraudsters. And it's similarly, we have to use these technologies for our best purposes. Even in our security controls, we should start building in the feedback loops, create machine learning algorithms for them, so that many of the tasks have to be automated, because we cannot limit the resource strength, which is looking at different visibility paradigms. We are looking at both our assets as well as our network infrastructure as well as cloud. So there is an increased digital landscape due to transformation, and to cater to securing this particular increased landscape, I guess that it is much more the digital technologies should be harnessed by even the security products. And that's what we have been doing it. We have tried to build in a lot of AI type of feedback loops for our critical systems, and we are trying to do it something on the manual part or something on the automated part. I mean, that is the whole thing. And as I rightly said, zero trust is definitely setting the right contextually aware and right set of rules which are required to be set for protecting the entire thing. And I guess it is the platforms which we are using. They have to have the maximum security. So if I'm taking certain services from say AWS, then these security services which are also offered by the same platform should also be harnessed. We cannot have a federated on-premise product looking at both the on-premise as well as on the cloud part. So it has to be, as I said, it has to be distributed. It has to be right at the source where this technology is getting adopted, and then start mitigating the threat right at that level. And the increase in the application landscape also, the changes are huge. I mean, nowhere it is just network centric. It has become all API driven, and that's where even the thefts are all API driven, and something like crypto mining and everything. I mean, this is all because of the API threat landscape increasing. So that's where even the data visibility on API, what exactly are the APIs calling, that has to be kind of tapped in. And we are trying to develop on our security parameters for increasing our visibility on this API front. And even OS Top 10 has released the API security as one of the
Absolutely.
top 10 vulnerabilities and top 10 area of interest for security. So yeah, with that I would add, set the context that yes, digital transformation is really challenging, because there are multiple technologies, multiple platforms, but at the same time, security is a single federate, and we have to kind of more diversify and start adopting these technologies which are getting adopted by, I guess, the fraudsters. I mean, we are also on the same leveling field now, and we have to be playing smart to only we can kind of avoid the cyber threat.
Thanks, Shashank. I think you have really put across some very relevant points related to AI, adoption of cloud, where typically the benefit of AI is coming because you can use there's big data analytics and all that. Then endpoint security should be very close to the user, because now the user is roaming or working from anywhere. So with that, I also want to have a view of Mr. Balram Chaudhary. So whatever Mr. Shashank has mentioned the points, I think it's relevant for each kind of a domain. Okay, and specific to your finance also, right? Data centric approach is definitely important, because you are capturing and processing so many data related to it. So what's your viewpoint? What are the initiatives that you are taking internally, focusing and addressing these cybersecurity challenges coming from all these parameters, whether your adoption of a cloud,
That's,
adoption of an
that's good.
applications and all?
That's good to ask these questions, and I have been listening to the co-panelists, and they all have talked about the SASE approach. They have all talked about the JTNS. So I don't want to repeat the same stuff which has been already told by all the panelists here. So yes, what is required for any organization? Just street landscape has been changed, and so we need to think about our approach to create a framework, which is yes, certainly the people say SASE and JTNA. So does it mean that we are covering 100% of the cybersecurity risk which is available in the SASE? But answer is no still. It's not like that. So SASE will cover your SD-WAN, SASE will cover your JTNA, SASE will cover your secure web gateway or next generation secure web gateway. SASE will cover your some of the SASE service provider will provide you WAN acceleration kind of things where we are talking about that accessing any resource, consuming any applications from anywhere in the world. But at the same time, we need to ensure that we should be secure enough. On the individual security perspective, if I will tell you, all SASE provider provide some kind of tools and technology which will say 100% that if you are going to take this SASE tools, you will be 100%. No, that's a 50%. So someone will give you network DLP, someone will not give you offline DLP, someone will give you, the DRM, half of the DRM, someone will not give you DRM. So while we create a SASE approach, we need to think all perspectives. No one is going to give 100%. So for the organization perspective, we need to think this and then create an approach, the framework for my organizations. Number one, while you are going to consume multi-cloud environment. So nowadays, multi-cloud environment, the application development, if you have in-house applications, you have taken platform as a service or infrastructure as a services where you are going to develop certain kind of applications. And once you are developing applications, and if you are not thinking, security in a code itself, while someone developer is going to develop your applications, then you have to run some another kind of approach. You have to run with VA, then PT, and blah blah. So now we should be, there is a time while you are creating approach that's called SASE, we need to think about secure in a code. So DevOps and Sex is the new phenomenon, and people have started using it, and we should be started. We are starting to using in some kind of DevSecOps. And third is the API. API is nowadays economy. Fintech has been that grown like anything. And again, if I come across that the SASE framework, who will provide? So Netscope, Cloudflare, or GSK, or only anybody. So someone say, yes, I will secure your API as and when as a gateway. Someone say, yes, we will do 50% or 60% of that while you consume someone else API and someone else is consuming your API. So in this, so we should be thinking about while we create layered approach for any organizations, we should be thinking myself, not the product. Oh, once we have taken some of the product, it will ensure that we are having 100% security. No, not at all. So we should be creating, we should know our organization what all tools and technology required to create 100% postures of the security. No one can guarantee 100% for the myself. Yes, I have given my 100% to create. So we should be thinking SASE, we should be thinking the API layer security, we should be thinking the DevSecOps. And this is the way. If anywhere we are going to miss, there will be certain time every day we are putting the key and something like that at your gate, and someday you missed, and same day someone else will come and left your everything which is available in your room or home. So we need to be while we are creating the SASE approach, we should be thinking about all aspect. Not only SASE is not going to help, but we need to have some permutation combinations of the tools and technology which can give 100% SASE. This is what I want to say. Rest the zero trust network architectures already that all panelists have sold, and I think yes, there is a need, and we have started evaluating it. And shortly we are going to implement some of the things which is available, some of the name which has been already implemented. But I am also thinking about, because if API security, it's a critical nowadays. Without that, we are not going to live in the fintech world. So we need to think purely how we can ensure that I am consuming, someone else is consuming, how we will ensure that we are secure in the API as well. Thank you very much, Brijesh.
Thank you, Balram sir. And maybe some concluding remarks, Rima ma'am, from your side, how our law enforcement agencies are taking it at their level from these approaches that we discussed. I'm sure in the government we are seeing a adoption of AI with so much data aggregating and other set of factors. So what's your view on that?
I think Mr. Shashank spoke briefly about the digital landscape. So that's exactly what I'm going to say as a final word to the discussions we just had. If you look at let me talk about the crime landscape. See, all of us are very well aware that the crime landscape is slowly moving from the physical space to the digital space. That is why it is very, very important for us, especially for the law enforcement agencies, that we come up with these kind of strategies well in advance, so that when we have to actually deal with cybercrime investigation, we have a system in place. Today, the most important challenge that we face is that as soon as a crime is registered with cyber implications, it becomes very hard for the investigator, the inspector who investigates the crime, to have access to the different networks, to the different platforms, to dig out information so that the investigation can be taken forward. It is still a challenge. I know many of us are facing this challenge, but it is still a challenge that we have to overcome.
Okay, I think we got some issue here from ma'am's side.
Yes. Okay.
So before she reconnect, Ambut sir, maybe your view, your concluding remarks on what are the technologies that you're adopting and the initiatives that you are taking overall.
I think when it comes to a digital business today, right, what is of relevance is that the customers are becoming omnipresent, and so are the businesses. So whether and to achieve this, actually, uh, there's a lot of investment that's happening towards investing in cloud applications, or hybrid infrastructures or cloud infrastructures, right? So that you can spin up as and when needed, right? But what does this all leads to is that you will have remote users, you will have various kind of systems or devices that will communicate. And there could also be a possibility that that you'll have uh, you know traditional IoT devices that you may have to deal with, right? So the essence out here is that uh, all these four attributes, right, whether it's identity or a device or a network or an application, if whenever they are uh, you know uh, transacting with the technical ecosystem, right, they must be validated and proven trustworthy before the transaction can occur, right? So this is the core mantra that we deal with. We don't say that we are 100% or we have already achieved this or that much, right? But the point is that this always remains in our mind, that we have identities of main focal area for any system that is being introduced or already running, right? uh, all our high value assets are insured with a step up authentication or a risk based authentication, and we make use of biometrics as and when needed. We make sure that devices are managed, are validated as healthy before we allow any connections, right? There is a very important need for us to ensure that we follow least privilege access by default, and no access by default. The two systems that are the two factors or the attributes that we always ensure. And there's a lot of need for pervasive data and telemetry data, which can be used for your understanding, right? This understanding could be to understand what are the gaps, are there new controls needed, etc., and the postures are continuously evolved. That's how we you know look at uh, implementing the secured uh, networks for our secured access in our environment.
Thank you, Ambut sir. I think you mentioned very relevant point for attributes that needs to be adopted irrespective of the product and all, which may be a posture checks, your telemetries, and the data, typically data coming out from your own factors based on which you will take the next set of actions. So Rima ma'am is back. So Rima ma'am, over to you. You were putting across certain points related to the information piece of it.
Hi, sorry, there was a network trouble here. So basically, what I wanted to say as the final word is that today, if you look at the crime landscape, it is slowly moving from the physical space to the digital space, and it is definitely an evolving scenario. Like I mentioned in the beginning of my talk, we have to match up with the pace. Our security interventions, the way we investigate these cyber attacks, the malicious campaigns or cybercrime at large, which expose the weaker sections, especially children, women, and people who don't have enough digital literacy but have access to all kind of networks, thanks to the cheaper data packages available in the country. We have to keep in mind all these aspects, and we have to make sure that our interventions match up with the pace at which the digital crime landscape is evolving. I think for that to happen, it is very, very important that we have something like a zero trust framework strategy, which at least gives us an authentication based identification of who is actually involved. So when we actually investigate a cybercrime, you have at least access to the online engagement of the victim, which will give us enough clues to if it's a case of a missing a girl missing case, or an online sexual abuse case. At least it will give you pointers to reach out to the accused and bring him to the law, in front of the law. So that's what I'd like to say, and thank you so much for this opportunity.
Yeah, thank you, Rima ma'am. I think very relevant points. If we go and adopt these things as a part of the initial onboarding, maybe where we are onboarding a normal user while giving him an internet access or internet package. So I think before we conclude, so Gurinder, I want to hear some concluding remarks from you. Like you've heard, I think all the panelists, their viewpoint, which is very relevant within their specific domains. So what you see as a cybersecurity expert, how this things are moving across, and how these attributes which everyone mentions needs to be, are these attributes are there in these platforms and architectures, or is that needs to be matured? So what's your viewpoint on that before we conclude this?
I would say they were very relevant points, whether you talk about the UBA part of it or AML part of it, for churning this huge amount of data which we are seeing from different set of products. Orchestration, which is, again, I would like to say, it's very important because whatever security solutions which organizations are deploying, they should be able to talk to each other, they should be able to value add, they should be able to give a risk score for a user behavior. And as Ambuj was also talking about, that they are implementing these kind of controls where a user based risk score based on his behavior is provided, and on the basis of that you can have a restricted or conditional access to certain data or from certain devices, typically to provision the deep security controls for any kind of application access or data access for a user. So in a nutshell, I would say it's all about the user centric approach to security, where user has become a new parameter for the organizations today rather than the firewalls or the gateway devices, because the user is working from anywhere. So in order to basically provision a better security, user centric data security controls which are more, I would say, floating based on his different profiles as well as his different state, is something which a lot of organizations are started adapting. And orchestration is something which is very important, because unless until these solutions are talking to each other, we'll not get a proper risk score or the UB analysis for a user, which is very important today in order to basically provision these floating controls.
Thanks, Gurinder. So with that, we will concluding this panel discussion. And I think in brief, we all understood the importance of adopting a zero trust within our security practices and using these attributes which we discussed. So with that, I think thank you so much to all the panelists for sparing their time on this interactive discussions. So thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.